Hi, all of our lovely podcasters. This is Laura. I want to thank each and every one of you who joined me in person or via the live stream for our first ever benefit event in the Catskills region of New York. If you didn't catch it live, stay tuned for more information on how you can support the show and get access to the archived footage of the event, featuring environmentalist Bill McKibben in conversation with me, Taina Asili's performance, and more. The show is supported by listeners and donors like you. We intentionally do not take government or corporate funding. We prefer to be beholden to you, rather than those who spread bad chemicals on our planet, for example. Go to lauraflanders.org/donate for more information on how you can become a member supporter. And thank you. Now, here's this week's show. Hi, I'm Laura, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, a TV and radio program that shines a light on the solutions of tomorrow today. We report on the people and movements driving systemic change from the worlds of politics, arts, and entrepreneurship. Welcome. The Laura Flanders Show is all about doing things differently. Our guest, Sarah Jones, Tony Award-winning performer and comedian, is taking on that challenge when it comes to making a documentary. She calls it an Unorthodoc, about sex, power, race, and our economy. And how do you even talk about such things in today's polarized and commercial media world? Sell by Date expands on Sarah Jones's acclaimed 2016 off-Broadway solo production of the same name. She plays herself in the film, along with 4 different characters that she's created, as well as real people whom she interviews. People in the sex industry and out of it, with an array of opinions about it. You will see activists of all kinds alongside celebrities. Rosario Dawson and Bryan Cranston make an appearance. And of course, there's Sarah's own mom. It's in screenings now on November 8th. It starts streaming on Amazon Prime. I'm so happy to bring Sarah Jones back to the Laura Flanders Show. It has been an age since we've seen each other, and you have been through a lot. How are you?
It has been, I think maybe for all of us, I was jokingly saying after a screening of the film, it is such a kind of challenge just to be human these days and to, kind of hold space for all these complex topics as we try to remember who we are, mitigated by all the technology and, the kind of pitfalls that come with the Twitter sphere and short sound bites, trying to make sense of where we are.
It's what I appreciate about you, Sarah. I mean, for people that don't know, Sarah Jones has never settled for being one thing, even one race, one gender, even one person. She travels with a whole array of characters that she has brought to the screen and to the stage before the screen over many years, going back to Bridge and Tunnel, which looked at gentrification in her home borough of Queens, New York, to Sell by Date, which is now this new film. Many people will say the film is about sex and decriminalization of the industry and how do we have healthy attitudes towards sex. To me, though, it's really about what you've always been about, which is how do you hold many identities, ideas, and, opinions at the same time?
Well, it's so funny, Laura. So my characters are fans of yours, and I will let them maybe speak to your question.
Hi there, Laura, sweetheart. I don't know if you can say sweetheart anymore. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Anyway, my name is Lorraine. Sarah is the very nice young Black girl performer who you just met. She calls herself Black. Again, I don't want to get into trouble, but she puts on her shows, what she calls her one-person shows. And really, that means she takes the credit and makes us come out here and do all the work. Anyway, Lorraine has been with me since the Bridge and Tunnel days.
Lorraine.
Love Lorraine. And like my other characters, she has an opinion, right, on women, sex, power as a senior herself in a world that often, I think, sort of separates, the youth and sexuality from, being a person of a certain age. And I guess what, you're not supposed to have any sexuality. And so in the play, which inspired the film, Lorraine actually gives a monologue talking a little bit about something very vulnerable, potentially taboo, stigmatized, which is her own sexuality. How do we even talk about that, right? For women of her generation, God forbid you should, step out of the cultural norms that minimized women's sexuality and made it all about the very heteronormative male gaze. So just for her to be engaging in this conversation at all is sort of mind-blowing for her. And I love the idea of bringing, hi, my name is Bella. Hi, Laura. This is amazing. PBS, like all day. I just think of my mom and her tote bags and her like mugs. Anyway, I just want to say that as like a person of another generation, like you all would say Gen Z, and I would say like for Sarah Jones and you, I mean like older, I mean, not to call you old, but you are like chronologically advanced people. But like, we in my generation have a completely different relationship to like sex, the sex industry. Like I have OnlyFans like as one of my main apps that like pops up immediately. And I don't see it as like, oh, women are bad if they're sexual. Like actually something's wrong if you're not sexual. So as you can tell, the play, which, kind of inspired the film, is really about human beings. And just like Bridge and Tunnel, the, one-person show that I did on Broadway was ostensibly about, gentrification, immigration. It's really about our collective humanity, especially in a culture where we have so much multiplicity and so many opinions. It's actually an opportunity for a really powerful, honest conversation. And I'll just say this. If we think of, the sex industry or maybe prostitution, sex work, whatever we call it, as the oldest profession, which people like to say, I think it's really more like the oldest conversation we're not having in an honest way about something that affects us all as human beings. Why can't we talk about this?
Well, and the journey that you've been on from stage show to film is really the story that you tell in the film. Here's the trailer from Sell by Date. Check it out.
I'm Sarah Jones. My show, Sell by Date, has taken me to some pretty incredible places, and now I get to turn it into a movie. This topic's not often talked about. The sex industry.
This is your vision that you have built over so long.
The first thing you see when you Google me is unnecessarily mean. Controversy.
What is the backlash? They don't even know what it is yet.
Sell by Date has become a war zone, and my characters have become frighteningly real.
Plot twist.
We are like legit in crisis.
What do I need, a bodyguard now?
If you're gonna shut this all down, then the conversation doesn't open up.
It means a lot to those of us that are still walking in that life.
The gatekeepers of culture, which are usually white cisgendered males, they're going to walk in and say, oh my God, Sarah Jones, huge fan.
Hi, Benny.
Thanks for coming in. I'm a huge fan.
The real problem is Sarah doesn't know what she really believes.
Is sex work empowering? Is it exploitation?
You are getting into flavors and textures that make people uncomfortable.
I'm gonna keep my hands where I can see them myself.
I didn't realize I had my own truth to unpack.
I wish we lived in a reality where I could tell just one side of a story, but that's not the world we're in.
This was your destiny to do this show.
We still don't control our own narratives.
People have walked all over us and portrayed us in this light that continues to be negative.
We're underestimated, no matter how high we can climb.
A lot of people don't know the real history.
My hope is I get to make the movie that speaks to all of this.
You call it a one-person show, but really we do all the work.
Okay.
So coming back to you, Sarah, real person, as people can tell, the film contains you, your characters, and then real people. Why?
It's so important to me as a solo performer. All these years, I've gotten to embody different people. Hi, Laura, this is such an opportunity. I want to say Laura because I love the way you spell it. But my name is Nereida. I am half Dominican, half Puerto Rican, all proud. And I am a women's rights advocate. I am very clear that the lives of women and girls, and the ways that the patriarchy that we are seeing all around us, right? We have Roe v. Wade, we have the Dobbs decision. We can see in our society that as women, it's almost like we're going backwards sometimes. And so I really wanted to be part of this conversation as a woman of color, but also just like for all of us as women and, people across the gender spectrum, non-binary people and men need to be involved in this conversation. Like anytime there's a question of women and power, it's a men's issue because they're the ones doing the dominating. And obviously, if we could fix this, we would have by now. Okay, so bringing Nereida and all of those other voices in has always been a great, kind of fun and hopefully unusual way to talk about what matters to me as an artist on stage. But with film, there's so many tricks and you can edit and, I can turn into different characters and it sort of isn't that interesting when you can watch the Avengers or whatever it is and kind of have magic happening. I wanted to see if we could use this medium in ways that I can't, kind of present these ideas in the theater. Enter real people, the real people who gave me the privilege of hearing their stories. I got to interview people in the sex industry, whether they call themselves sex workers, whether they call themselves survivors. I got to honor their real experience. And instead of having it just come from me, I got to learn from them and hopefully bring the audience on a journey that also, again, honors them as the real experts on this topic.
The other challenge that you faced, of course, different from the production on Broadway even, was the idea of the entry of a Hollywood company, a commercial company wanting to produce this piece. Talk about your qualms and your relationship with that industry, because you raise it very beautifully in the film that this makes it additionally complicated.
Yeah. Well, and again, I want to stress that we call it an unorthodoc because it has narrative elements. My characters are in there. And this is all real life. So it is, we take the elements of what happened to me and put them up on screen with some context. But I really did work with a company that said, we love you. We love your stories. We saw the play. We get it. And then the ensuing attempt to work with them showed me how little opportunity I would have to actually get my ideas out there because of a system of filtration and oversimplification and frankly, just the opposite of creativity. They got to sell soap. So I don't want to sell soap. That's not what I'm here for. I want to hear human beings and amplify the voices that I don't usually hear. And that's the opposite of what people whose job ultimately is to first make money. And so what I'm learning is I get to navigate as carefully as I can the spaces where I can both reach the masses, but also not have, the substantive ideas that I care about watered down and then added to some soap.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. My guest is Sarah Jones, a Tony Award-winning writer-performer and now director, whose film Sell-By Date, based on her play of the same name, is streaming soon on Amazon Prime. Sell-By Date looks at sex, power, economics, and the difficulties of documentary making through Sarah's own voice, her fictional characters, all of whom she performs, and through her interviews with real people in and around the sex industry with many contrasting opinions about it. You get a good sense of her performance style through listening, but to see her morph in and out of character in a second is really something else. For that reason, I'm going to urge you extra strongly this week to check out the TV version of our program, either on YouTube, where you can stream it anywhere, anytime, or on PBS stations across the country this week. All the information is at lauraflanders.org. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter so that you'll receive all our uncut conversations, as well as my regular commentaries. The latest is on the damage abstraction does to our news coverage. Election deniers, I say, aren't born, they're bred. Next, to dance or not dance with the Hollywood film industry, Sarah shares her personal experience and why she ultimately chose to found her own company, Foment, to produce Sell-By Date. But first, here's Sold Out by Ultra Nate from her new album Ultra, courtesy of Blue Fire and Peace Biscuit.
This is the moment we've been waiting for, something to believe in. Tell everybody better hurry.
joined the club. Like me and so many other independent media makers, you created your own company, you directed your film yourself. And here we are, you are, with your colleagues, bringing what you clearly want to be a complicated story that doesn't really come down on one side or another out into the public. In the moment that I have to say is one of the most polarized, binary thinking, commercialized cultural moments I've ever been in. So I guess my question is, how's it going?
Audiences are king, queen, and non-binary, non-hierarchical, kind of leaders in all of this. Everyone who gets to see this film, I hope, will get to formulate their own opinion, will get to learn more about something that, again, it's funny, the notion is, we can't talk about that. We have to sweep it under the rug. We can have, Pretty Woman, right? Julia Roberts in thigh-high boots and Richard Gere and a kind of sanitized Cinderella version of a story. Or we can have, incredibly reductive, I think, not that I don't want to see police procedurals handle this subject matter if they can, but where are the voices of the mostly women, girls, and femmes in the sex industry who we never hear from? Or if we do, they are, kind of vilified or marginalized in ways that forget. I always like to tell people, do you know Billie Holiday, who's one of our most important cultural figures of all time? She actually was able to move from Baltimore to New York in part as a young girl with survival sex. And I think if we could just remind ourselves as a culture that patriarchy, the same kind of ways that women are oppressed by our laws, by our culture more broadly, even though progress is being made, but it's still there. When you add sexuality to that, it just kind of, I would say, limits all of us and our ability to be full humans with self-determination and, frankly, some joy in our lives. I feel like if we can unpack this conversation more, we can have a healthier relationship to erotica, our sex lives. It doesn't have to feel so kind of bound up in puritanical, the kind of stuff that we're seeing that's so problematic in our larger culture, even though a certain person who was an occupant of the White House brought the sex industry pretty much right into, all of our living rooms with Stormy Daniels. So I'd like to debunk the idea that this isn't part of our daily lives. It's as American as apple pie. It's also global. And it's a core feminist issue that I think every wakeful person should care about.
There are many serious parts of your film, although there's a lot of humor there. And one continuing thread is your relationship with your sister, who you lost not so long ago. Can you talk a little bit more about her, what you found out about her, because you leave a lot unsaid in the film?
Human lives and our families and the kind of constellations of what I've come to understand as generational trauma, women across all backgrounds. And I come from a family that's mixed race, Black, white, Jewish, Christian, Caribbean. We have Latinx cousins. I have everybody. The one thing we all seem to have in common is these stories that are either hard for previous generations to talk about, or even for me, stories of women and sex and power and decisions, who married whom as a way to marry up, as they say. How is that not a transactional relationship idea, right? So what I like to do is try to make sure it's a fully well-rounded conversation and include the grief that's there. But obviously, and I lost her longer ago than one might think, but as part of this conversation, I unearthed some, new ideas that I didn't know were there. And I think that's also my hope, is that as a collective society, we get to dig in and unpack, because what we think isn't affecting us is actually right there in the room with us throughout our lives, but including in this area. And if we can heal from stigma, shame, secrets, and get them out into the open, then, I love the expression, hurt people, but free people, free people. And I'd love to see that for all of us across the gender continuum and around this very tricky topic of capitalism and sex and where they merge.
Well, the obvious follow-up question to that is, how was it working with your mother?
Oh my goodness. You know, it was wonderful. She's amazing. And I got to sort of be grateful that she gave me so many gifts. My mom was a very young mom. She met my father when she was in college and was part of that generation that believed, you know, you don't dare do anything, you know, untoward until you're married. And so the next thing she knew, she was married with a baby to somebody I love my dad too. I'm very grateful, but they didn't know each other. They were kids. But my mom, she's an OBGYN, you know, so she was sort of drawn to medical school and literally helping women, you know, give life and or do whatever reproductive, medical procedures were appropriate for them. So I just want to say that. Shout out to access to abortion and reproductive health. My mother would say it, and anyone else who cares about women would say the same. And working with her was kind of a dream because I got to see a mixture of attitudes. She's an older generation. She does stay in the film. I won't give it away, but she's worried about me associating with, you know, anything that could be construed as inappropriate or sexually, could harm me. And we know this, right? We know that young people now, if you have an OnlyFans or if you are freer with your sexuality than maybe your employers want you to be, there can be slut shaming, there can be stigma, when really we get to ask, men do it and it's fine. You know, or the wholesome Midwestern family, sorry to attack the Midwest, the wholesome family anywhere who goes out to a football game with their kids and then goes to Hooters afterward. How is that so different? It's still the sex industry on the side of your wings.
Now, you do have a certain very entrepreneurial Bronx taxi driver that comes along with you. He has a very interesting perspective on all this. Do you think his attitude's changed participating with you in this film?
You know what? I'm not going to dare speak for him.
What's good, Laura? You know what I mean? It's me, it's Rashid. Thank you for inviting me. I'm the only dude Sarah Jones brought with her on a journey. But like she said, and I want to shout out an organization called A Call to Men. My man, Ted Bunch. They co-founded an organization that wants to talk about men and how, you know what I'm saying, women and sex and all of that. If we ain't careful, it hurts us. You know what I mean? There's statistics about men, you know, watching too much porn. It creates anxiety. It makes your depression worse, all of that. So this ain't just about, you know, trying to be good to the women or ladies or whatever's the respectful term for y'all right now. Again, I mean, it's a minefield out there. But I'm saying I don't want to get canceled, but I also don't want to be living my life not really having my own relationship to all of this that's honest. I mean, I know when I was a little kid, the pressure on little boys, you know, you got to be a man. I wasn't ready to be no man. I don't want to know about ladies yet. You know what I mean? And what if you got my cousin is gay? All of that. So I want to talk about it all too. It's just not easy sometimes. So thank you for giving us a space for that. You know what I mean? Real talk. Okay.
Love me some Rashid.
He has his own relationship. And I think it's really important to say, Bryan Cranston in the film kind of shares something about his youth that it really touched me, that anytime there's hierarchy and oppression and marginalization, the way we have of women and femmes in this industry, the people who are doing the buying, I'm not saying that anyone who buys sex is a bad person or anything like that. I'm not saying the sex industry is something we have to shut down. I'm saying let's look more honestly at whether this is serving all of us the way we think it is, or is there some kind of way forward that incorporates all of the rest of the awakening that we're all trying to do?
I've talked to lots of people with many opinions on this subject on this show, and some have also reminded me, you care so much about women in work. Let's talk about women in a lot of different workplaces and how they're exploited. And you mentioned earlier, what this possibility of survival sex work has meant to people to get by at times. And I think we're all involved in a conversation of how do we get out of a carceral response to everything? Send in the cops, send people to prison, punishment as the only solution we feel like we've come up with the pain points, as somebody put it on our show not so long ago, in our lives. What do you think, looking, 50 years, what do you think's the story that moment will tell about this one?
It's funny you ask that, Laura, because the play Sell by Date was set in the future. And it was one way that I hoped to be able to talk about this topic in much the way that if you teach a feminism class today, or if you're taking a feminism class,
And like you look back and women didn't have the vote in like, I don't know, 1920 or whatever it was. Please don't test me on this right now. Like, you can't believe that was the world that we lived in.
And so my hope is that in the future, people can look back and say, I can't believe anyone ever locked up a woman while slapping a man on the wrist for just boys will be boys, because there were such puritanical attitudes about this issue. I want that. I also want to see what happens. We were talking a little bit earlier about social media, and folks can find me there because, for better and worse, it is the place where a huge conversation can happen about this globally. And I hope that we evolve so that there's more connection, honest connection that isn't just about monetization and your phone knowing what ads to send you, but is more about a truly forward-thinking conversation and policy. You know, if we can change policy and culture around these things, I hope that our future folks, our descendants, will look back and say, wow, you all were a mess. So glad we got out of that.
I don't like to condense or contract or cut the poems of the great poet and writer June Jordan, but I do want to give you a taste of her poem To Take Back the Night. Here's June. What about moonlight? What about moonlight? What about watching for the moon behind the locked doors and bolted shut bedrooms and the blind side of Venetian blinds, and cowering under the kitchen table and struggling from the car and wrestling head down when the surprise, when the stranger, when the surprise, when the coach, when the surprise, when the priest, when the surprise, when the doctor, when the surprise, when the family, when the surprise, when the lover, when the surprise, when the friend, when the surprise lacerates your throat, constricted into no more sound. Who will whisper, what about moonlight? What about moonlight? What about watching for the moon so far from where you tremble, where you bleed, where you sob out loud for help or mercy, for a thunderbolt of shame and retribution, where you plead with God and devils and the creatures in between to push the power key and set you free from filth and blasphemy, from everything you never wanted to feel or see, to set you free so you could brush your teeth and comb your hair and maybe throw on a jacket, or maybe not. You running, curious and so excited, and running into the night, only asking, what about the moonlight? What about the moonlight? Thank you, June Jordan. For more information on this week's guests, along with a suggested reading list and links to related episodes to explore, check out our episode reading and research post at patreon.com/The LF Show. That's also where you'll find an invitation to watch the premiere of each week's show on our YouTube channel and chat live in real time with me, Sundays, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. This show also airs on over 300 public television stations and 40 or so community radio stations across the country for free and as a free podcast. But all of that costs money, so we are particularly thankful and appreciative of our Patreon partners. You can join them at patreon.com/The LF Show. What do they do that's so special? They pony up a little bit of support every month. Whatever they feel is right for them, they do their bit to make sure that our program can remain free of advertising for all. For our podcasters, please write a review if you like the show on Apple Podcasts and share a link with your friends and family. We don't have a PR firm. We have you. So go to patreon.com/The LF Show. Join our team by becoming a Patreon partner. Give us a push in your social media networks. And for more ways to help, go to lauraflanders.org/donate. Thanks for listening. This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, along with Sabrina Artel, Nat Needham, David Newman, Rory O'Connor, Alicia Duque, Jeanette Hernandez, and Jeannie Hopper. Major funding for this program is provided by the Novo, Park, Ellen Poss Family, Hisuku Wilson Foundations, the Schumann Media Center, Rising Fund at Tides, Kim Connor and Nick Groombridge, Jane Fonda, and listeners like you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for contributing. Thanks for your ideas. Stay kind. Stay curious. Until the next time, I'm Laura.